Hello, and what is up, everybody? Welcome to Doop on the Volley. This is Philly Sports Network's newest podcast on the Philadelphia Union. I'm Tim Lovinguth here with our PSN Union crew. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves because this is their first time on the podcast. So let's go ahead and throw it over to my man, Jimmy King. What's up, Jimmy?
Hey, how's it going, Tim? Thanks for the intro. What's up, everyone? I've probably met most of you that are listening in. If I haven't met any of you that are listening in, thanks for following along on the coverage, and hope to meet a lot of you this season. It was a short preseason, off season, but I'm ready. Although with the weather the last couple of days, I don't know if I'm quite ready for late February soccer in Philadelphia. So we'll see how that goes. But I'll throw it over to Paul to introduce himself.
What's up, everyone? My name's Paul. I'm really excited to be here. Love talking Union, love talking soccer. Just love everything about the great global game. If I haven't met any of you guys, I'm really excited to talk to you guys, possibly meet some of you throughout the season. That's all I got to say. I got to agree with Jimmy with this weather. Late February soccer, it's not looking too fun, but it's what us Philadelphia supporters do. We'll always be there for our team. And Eric, go ahead, man.
All right, I'm Eric. Oh, thank you. I see that comment. Thank you. I do like these shirts. These are great. I'm excited to get going. I'm ready. It was a short off season, and at the same time, I'm ready to go. It was the perfect length in some ways because I want to get into it again. Last season left a little bit of a bitter taste in the mouth, so I want a fresh start. Let's go.
I love it. Welcome everyone again. This is just so cool to have us all on this podcast here. We're always going to be here to talk Union. Today, we're just kind of going through and doing a cool little season preview. The first thing, though, is we're going to talk about this new kit, and I'm going to pull it up here in a few minutes, but I just wanted to kind of start to talk about it and talk about how it's the 15th season of the Union somehow already. This kit that is stunning is the new home kit. It's got the return of the center stripe. It's got a whole bunch of elements on it. Looks like snakeskin at some parts. Looks like lightning bolts. It's kind of got a little bit of everything from past Union kits. So while I go ahead and pull that up, why don't you guys go ahead and give your takes on it? Go ahead and whoever wants to kick us off, go for it.
Yeah, I'll start. Like Tim said, it's the return of the center stripe, which is such a iconic part of early Union kits. So I think most fans will probably be pretty happy with that. I think the one thing that a lot of people have brought up is that the price point is a little hard to swallow at times, especially with as Jose brought up on Twitter the other day, that the difference between the authentics and the replicas or whatever they choose to call them, and the difference in details. It does suck for fans, but as far as how the team's going to look on the field come Saturday night in Chester, I tend to like it. I think they'll look sharp. I like the blue trim, I think it's a good next home kit for them to wear for the next 2 years. I don't personally have any complaints.
Yeah, to be honest, this is one of my favorite kits that the Union have ever dropped. It's gorgeous. I love it. 10 out of 10. Basically, Jimmy said everything that was on my mind. But the only thing that I'm really contemplating is who do I want to get on the back of that jersey? There's so many good players on this Union team. It's really tough, but yeah, like Jimmy said, love it, beautiful. They said everything I needed, so go ahead, Eric.
All right, I'll start with the negative, get that out of the way. My only two complaints. One, I feel like the logo or the crest is slightly too low. but I feel that may just be. We'll have to see what it looks like on the players on the field.
Speaking of what it
my
looks like,
only-
here it is now for those watching. If you all can see it, we'll put it over our faces. Go ahead, Eric.
And so someone pointed out that it's actually not any lower than the original center stripe crests.
Huh.
It just feels lower because on those the stripe didn't go all the way up to the neck. It actually got cut off lower down. And I looked back. I saw one picture of Danny Mwanga wearing one of the old jerseys, and it looked like they were right. Like it was about the same height. So it may end up being a non-issue. My only other complaint isn't even a complaint about the jersey itself. Someone pointed out that the center stripe looks a little like tire tracks, and I haven't been able to get that out of my head.
Oh no!
Oh man,
I see it now.
I've just done that to all of you too.
Last year it was the Simpsons clouds, and now it's the tire tracks.
Yeah, I do. I agree about the blue trim though. I really like the blue trim, and overall, I think it's an awesome jersey.
I also think that the new sleeve sponsor isn't. I'm not one for sponsors, but obviously in today's MLS, there's going to be sponsors on jerseys and everywhere you look. But I think as far as it's not Dude Wipes, which NYCFC had a couple years ago. So I don't think that you can really be too upset with what we have on the sleeve there. But I would say my one thing that I think is a little strange is the Adidas logo also being in the center stripe. I feel kind of weird about that. But it's not the biggest thing, but
I saw someone say that it had to be, and I'm not sure why. Because
that was good. Yeah, I was going to ask if maybe that was an Adidas requirement.
Yeah, which seems weird because I feel like other jerseys it is on the side.
Interesting.
Yeah,
but I could be wrong on that. But yeah, I agree. It does seem a little weird to have it in the center.
That is very true. Now I can't get tire tracks out of my head now that I'm being
I ruined it. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm just gonna reframe it. I thought it was the center stripe. It kind of looks like a lightning bolt at sometimes for me, so I'm gonna keep with that. That's what I'm gonna go with. But with that, we'll hopefully see that jersey in play here. Well, we might even see it down at Saprissa early next week, but I'm sure we'll definitely see it next Saturday, which is the Union home opener, which is crazy. But before we get too far down into the season and anything like that, there was a preseason game yesterday, guys. I know it was actually streamed from the club, so props to the club for streaming one. Unfortunately, it wasn't quite a barn burner or anything else like that. It was a 0-0 game, so I know we wanted to kind of give a few thoughts on it, so I guess I'll go first with it. The one thing that I saw from the few minutes I was able to catch on my lunch break was that it looked like the front three were doing a very good job of pressing New England and forcing them into mistakes to try to create chances, and then they just kind of went wanting after that. That was my one real takeaway from the game, other than we got to see New England's new kits, not ours, but that was that. So what do you guys think of our final preseason game here before we get into the nitty-gritty of the 2024 season? So anyone can kind of jump in and say what they thought of the preseason.
Yeah, I only got to catch a couple minutes of it as well while I was at work. But I thought similar things as Tim. I thought the lineup to start the game was interesting. We saw Damian Lowe start in the back line for it's been a couple games now that he's gotten the start in preseason, and he's gotten a lot of praise from Jim in his couple press conferences so far this season. So that's interesting to see. He has said that Damian's one of the more motivated players during the preseason. So I thought that was interesting. And we also saw Quinn Sullivan play on that right midfield, play in that right midfield position where Bedoya usually plays, which Jim said he was going to try to utilize him there more often. So I like some things that I like seeing some things that Jim has mentioned he was going to try to do early on in preseason, and we'll see if that kind of continues into the regular season coming up here next week. But otherwise on the field there wasn't too much to really have glaring eyes over. But there was a few little plays where people were getting in good positions. Kai had some good crosses across the box where people just weren't there. So I think there was some good signs there. It's just the worry is important games come up really, really quick, especially with CCC coming up on Tuesday. So just hoping they can put that together a little quicker than it seems like. But that being said, on a couple games or games ago against Cincinnati, they put 3 in pretty quickly. So, yeah, I don't know. It's going to be an interesting start to the season.
Yeah, I wasn't really able to catch much of the game like the other guys, but I'd have to agree with everything that's been said so far. I have, like Jimmy said, there have been a lot of positive signs I've seen. I think especially from the attack, and also as Tim mentioned, I enjoy the pressing that you saw the forwards doing, always on the ball, just trying to get the ball back and score. Quinn Sullivan in the right side of the midfield, I've always thought that was his best position or position he should play. Obviously, he played more in the striker role last year, which I didn't think suited him, even though he did well. But yeah, that's really all I've got to say about the preseason match, as I wasn't able to catch a lot.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I didn't catch a ton, but I have a question for you guys.
Ooh,
Based off of what Jimmy was pointing out with Damian Lowe starting a bunch and the fact that Bedoya is probably not quite up to speed yet at this point. And Tuesday is an away game in a very hostile environment, possibly one of the most hostile environments we'll face this year. So maybe he might be a little reluctant to throw Quinn Sullivan in there. Could we see a 3 at the back with Damian Lowe, Jack Elliott, and Jacob Glesnes all starting?
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised just because, I mean, we know Jim Curtin loves to go defensive, especially on the road, especially in big games, which even though it's the first game of the year, that CCC match will constitute a big game. I wouldn't be surprised if we see it. And based on fitness levels, it seems like the 3 center backs are up there amongst the best on the team right now. And then you kind of go into the midfield, you'd probably think Brujo and probably Bueno would kind of sit in front of them. So, I mean, I wouldn't hate that. You kind of sit back a little bit. You don't press as much until you really want to go as a team, especially like we keep saying, hostile environment. The first time we play Saprissa, where there'll actually be fans in the stadium to create the hostile environment, which we didn't have last time when we played them there. So, yeah, that's a good question. What else do you guys think? What do you think, Paul?
I don't hate the idea at all. Last year when it was first introduced, me and my friends always talked about how we enjoyed the 3 in the back because we feel that Kai and then Harrion and Bazo fit that wingback role perfectly with the way they push into the attack. I think it could be very beneficial for the team. You said the fitness isn't really – it's there in the midfield, but you don't have the depth because Bedoya is not fully there. So putting 3 midfielders in, I think that could be the way – I wouldn't mind it at all. If I'm Jim Curtin, which obviously I'm not, that's the way I would do it. That's what I would do, 3 in the back.
Yeah. I mean, I think that Jim has been pretty vocal about he likes that formation when he's trying to be a little bit more defensive. And he said the other day that the goal down in Saprissa is to keep them from scoring and going back to Chester and knowing that they can win against anyone there. So I don't know if they'll start with that. I hadn't thought about it. It's an interesting idea. I also think that there is an option. You know, he has also been very willing to put Harriel in as a third center back, and
Yes.
I haven't seen anything in preseason to suggest that maybe he would play there, but there are options to do so. So yeah, that's an interesting thought I hadn't thought of, Eric, and thank you for asking that question.
Well, yeah, with that, I think we need to start getting into our season preview here. And since we were already talking about formations and players, what better place to start than the roster for the 2024 season? So I know we want to turn it over to Jimmy to talk about this roster and kind of go position by position here. Here's a look at the roster for you guys if you're watching us here on the stream. So, Jimmy, take it away and feel free to start wherever you'd like there.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought we'd kind of go quickly over kind of each positional group, and maybe just everyone can kind of give their quick thoughts on whether they think it's well equipped, whether they think there's um, uh, some need for reinforcements. There are some players on here that will probably spend more time with Union too,
Yeah.
but they have played in some preseason games, so had to throw them on there just in case they get included in some game here or there. I guess we can start with the goalkeeper. That's probably the easiest to
Yeah.
nail down the starters. Andre Blake, there's not much to say there. Probably one of the best goalkeepers in MLS history. Behind him, though, I think probably one of the bigger question marks answered this offseason, picking up Oliver Semla from Louisville City, USL team. He was really good last year for Louisville City, and I believe he had 13 clean sheets out of his like 14 or 15 wins. So he also had like I think one of the most saves in all of USL. So the guy can save shots, and Jim Curtin said he's really big, he's really broad, demanding, physical, and he's also said he's a really good teammate so far, which is important to Union's fabric. Behind him, probably Holden Trent's the next in line. Wouldn't expect him to get too many games. I personally think, looking at this, they are much better. They're in a much better position than they were last season. I think just having someone that has starting experience in Semla behind Blake for those 10 games that Blake probably won't be here is important. And I don't really have, like I said, I feel a lot more comfortable about this position than I did last season. How are you feeling about it, Tim?
I feel good, honestly. There's some news there from Jose Nunez. That thank you for that. Holden's fingers still hurt. Yeah, that stinks for the third string goalkeeper there. But I mean, it's Andre Blake. Obviously, he's the starter. But we all know what's going to come up in the summer when the Gold Cup comes around. So, or not Gold Cup. I'm sorry. I'm used to Gold Cup. Copa America now coming around. And yeah, to have a new goalkeeper come in, who was a very good starter in USL. Like you said, 13 clean sheets to have as your backup goalkeeper. Obviously, no offense to Joe Bendick. He was a MLS vet, and he came in last year at times, and he was just shaky, which, now it feels a lot more solid. And yeah, I agree. I think it's a solid group of goalkeepers to come into the 2024 season. How are you feeling, Paul?
Position wise, I think the goalkeepers are one of the strongest on the team. I mean, you have like one of the best goalkeepers of all time, and obviously the best goalkeeper in Union history, and Andre Blake.
Yeah.
And then I'm really agreeing with Jimmy. I love the addition of Semla. He was one of the top goalkeepers last year with Louisville City, and to be able to get a young, developing goalkeeper and bring him into this team as a possibility. I know no one wants to talk about it, but Blake is getting older, so to be able to have him develop behind Blake for a couple years, and maybe have him be the new face of the goalie, it's a good, great situation, and you will need a guy for the Copa America. Almost said the Gold Cup there.
It's hard. It's hard right now. There's too many things going on.
But yeah, Semla, I think he's a great replacement for Blake for the Copa America when Blake will be off with Jamaica. And I really think the Union are in a good spot with their goalkeepers. So go ahead, Eric. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that's been said so far. I'm excited to see Semla. I think he'll step in and do really well, especially because he doesn't have to step in right away. So he gets time to gel with the team, build that rapport with the defenders before getting kind of thrown into the fire eventually once Blake is off at the Copa America, not the Gold Cup. But I think, I think even with all that, it's a tough job to step in for one of the best in the league's history. It's a lot of pressure, especially for a younger goalkeeper. So I think how he handles that pressure is going to ultimately play a big part in defining how well he does.
Yep. We got a comment there. Don't forget
Absolutely.
Rick too from
That is
Union
true.
too. Like that he's on the rise. Like he's
He
gonna
is. He's
gonna be there.
yeah. He's pretty young, but he looks really good for Union too. One of the more exciting players for me down there right now.
Yeah.
Moving on to the defense. On left back, obviously we brought back Kai Wagner this year. As you know, there is some controversy around Kai in general. But as far as his performance on the pitch, I don't think you can really complain about adding him back to the roster. It makes the team better, undoubtedly, on paper. Behind him, Matt Rial. It's a tough situation for Matt, man. I feel bad. He maybe thought he finally had a chance to fight for that starting position before Kai came back, and it just kind of looks like he's still stuck behind him. And then we've got Isaiah LaFleur, who came in from Houston Dynamo 2, and unfortunately had a ACL injury, which we've heard was the first one in Union history, which is like honestly, I tried looking it up to see if there was one before because I didn't think I heard it right. At the center back position, we got Elliott, and we have Jacob Glesnes and Damian Lowe, and then we have Mikanya back there as well. Todd bringing up Stu. Yeah. We just obviously people will know, or if they haven't heard, just sent Brandon Craig out on loan to USL side El Paso Locomotive. So that makes the center back pairing or grouping a little bit more lighter than it was a couple days ago. And then over on the right side, we've got Nate Harriel and Mbizo coming back for, they've kind of had that on and off thing for the last couple years. And then we brought in the new right back from, and will probably play mostly in U2. But I know that there are some people that are pretty high on him. He is on loan. It is pretty low risk. So yeah, we'll see how that works out there. Paul, how are you feeling about the defense as a whole? You think there's any glaring holes? You think there's any causes for concerns, or what do you like most about it?
So first off, I'll say like you really can't complain about bringing this strong defense back. Bringing back Kai, that's such a big thing for this defense. One of the top left backs in the league, and being able to just bring him back. You have your left back situated, especially with all the European interest that he had. You didn't know what you were going to do with your left back situation at the end of the season. And then Kai's back. And then you move on to the center backs. Elliott and Glesnes have been one of the top pairs in MLS for a couple years now. So you can't really complain about that either. A top pair, top defense. And then Damian Lowe, and as depth, or even if he's starting in the three in the back. I loved Damian Lowe addition last year. He proved me right. He was phenomenal when he came in, I thought. But yeah, overall, in the right backs, the same thing. Harriel and Mbizo, they played well last year. Harriel really grew as a defender and a player in general last year. So excited to see what he'll be able to do this year with a full off season, continue growing. But overall, I think I'd rate this the defense as like a B+, A-, B+ range. It's a good, solid crew, one that Andre Baker will love to have in front of him.
What you thinking?
I mean, I agree with everything that's been said so far. It'll be interesting to see at left back how much rotation there is, given the possible amount of games that we have. Because we have an idea of who can be rotated at center back and right back. Obviously, Harriel and Mbizo are going to be rotated on and off at right back, and then you can have any pairing really of Elliott, Glesnes, and Lowe, as we saw last year. But left back, there was a lot more reluctance to rotate last season, and you could tell that Wagner was gassed towards the end. And I think if we go as far as we want to in the Champions Cup and in Leagues Cup, then there's going to need to be more rotation there, or we're going to see the same fall off that we did this past season. So I think that's what I'm really looking at. in terms of defense. But I agree, this defense on their bad days is a top half defense in the league, and on their good days is the best defense in the league, as we saw 2 years ago. So there's a lot to like and not too much to worry about.
Totally. Now, Jim was asked the other day about if he thought they were a little short in the center back position after letting Craig go on loan, and if he thought maybe they were one injury away from becoming a lot less strong in the back. And his response to that was that they have people like Harriel who can slide over and play center back, and that was basically is the plan B. Tim, how do you feel about that? Do you think that there is there some cause for concern injury wise with this back line, especially with how many games there are, or do you think they're pretty well equipped for all the games this season?
I mean, there could be cause for concern if there is an injury at center back, especially like you're talking about. I mean, we've seen Harriel slide over at times. We've seen even they've played Kai Wagner there more as in a back three. So I don't know if you really want him to be a center back because you get so much out of him when he goes forward on the left. But yeah, I mean, it could be an issue. If you lose one of them, then you only have 3 on the roster right now. You could even maybe wonder if they're going to call up some U2 guys. Like I know Pierre's been playing very well, especially in preseason. He's had a chance with the first team. So I know he's a young kid, but like you just never really know if injury strikes you, we could even see something like that. But I think it would be more realistic to go along with what Jim Curtin is saying, and you might just see Nathan Harriel scoot over. Maybe we'll find another player who can play there. No, like nothing from Union past where there used to be like strikers that would play center back and then center backs that would play strikers. Anyone Aaron Wheeler fans out there? I'm dating myself with that one, but yeah, like so. I mean, it could be bad, but when you look at this defense as a whole, like Eric was saying, at their best, they are the best in MLS. So let's just hope and pray that there's no injuries, especially early in the season, and we can kind of get through it.
Right on. Yeah, moving on to midfield. I think most important or the biggest question in the midfield right now is who takes over that starting right-hand spot in the diamond. We probably know that McGlynn's going to take up the left.
Yeah.
Brujo's going to be at the bottom. And then Gazdag will be at the top of the diamond, linking up with the 2 forwards. But we have a few people that can play over on the right-hand side. We know Bedoya can play there, or although I think a lot of people are hoping that he probably has a little bit more of a limited role this year. Bueno has been good there. We also know that he can play behind Martinez. Martinez had a lot of games last year where he was coming off like injured in the last like 15 minutes of the game and then would be okay, or he'd miss like a game. So I think there's going to be need for somebody to be playing behind Jose Martinez as his replacement. And so I think without Flock, who unfortunately has suffered another injury, that's probably going to be Bueno. But it's interesting to see what's going to happen there. And then up top, I think the other big question mark is who's going to be the kind of backup to Daniel Gazdag, who similarly to what you said with Kai Wagner, there wasn't a ton of rotation with last year, or a solid one that could really put up some production. So we've got Torres, who I don't think a lot of people thought would come back this season, still on the team. And then we've got Raffanello and Periano, who both will probably get most of their minutes. Raffanello will probably be on the bench most games, but Periano will probably spend most of the time in U2. What are you thinking about the midfield right now, Eric?
I've been starting with where you just ended with Gazdag's backup. I've been surprised how much game time Torres has gotten in preseason. He's featured a lot, at least in the bits that I've been able to watch.
Now, do you think that maybe that's Jim Curtin and the Union kind of shopping him a little bit?
I think it's twofold. I think it's, or maybe even threefold. I think it's possibly them putting him in the shop window a little bit, and also just kind of after giving him an offseason to refresh, giving him an audition, so to speak, for that
Right.
backup role to really see if he can show something that eases their concerns and our concerns on him, and then also build up some confidence for him, which kind of goes hand in hand with that. And then moving on to the right side, I think there's gonna be a lot of rotation there. I think of all the spots in the midfield, that's the one we're gonna see be the most different game by game. One thing I thought of, if Bueno and Martinez both get called up for their national team, that leaves us a little shorthanded there.
Are we seeing Elliott back in the defensive midfield position?
Maybe, or going back earlier, we could see 3 at the back and then see maybe Bedoya and McGlynn as holding midfielders.
But then what happens when McGlynn's on the Olympic team for the U.S.?
Right. Oh,
Oh,
God.
man.
Yeah,
Oh my
you know,
gosh.
there's a whole lot of things that are going to happen this year.
Yeah, so it's good. There could be some tricky decisions there, but
I
when
think
everyone's
Flock
there,
being injured really puts a big speed bump in that midfield. I think. Yeah.
agreed. And I mean, the one positive of that, maybe we'll see some of the younger guys get some more minutes.
Yeah.
Particularly
I saw.
Quinn
Go ahead.
Sullivan. Quinn Sullivan would be nice to like we've been saying, seeing him get more minutes in a position that might be a little more natural than striker would be great, and great for the team, great for his development.
Absolutely. And I also saw, I think Dan commented it, asking about CJ Olney. Jim's been really high. Yep, there we go. Thank you. And then Jim was also talking about David Vasquez earlier or a couple days ago. So it seems like, there are some people, some young players that are in the pipeline that maybe could see come up for those situations when McGlynn's out, when Bueno's out. Which is a little bit scary, but when you break it down, that is what Union are built on, is building up those young players, bringing them up through the first team. And the last couple seasons, there's been roadblocks that have not allowed some players to get up and get those opportunities. So I think that's going to be an interesting thing to look out for. Paul, how are you feeling about this? Any big holes? What are you most excited about?
To be honest, looking at this picture has me a little worried about the depth of the midfield. Because like you said, Martinez, he comes off some games, he came off injured in the last 10 minutes, which means you need to put Bueno down there if he needs to start a game, which shrinks out the right side of the midfield. And then you'll have like either Bedoya or Sullivan starting, which, and then you're going to need someone if McGlynn gets hurt, someone's going to need to replace him. So, I mean, I'm not going to lie, I might be a little worried about the depth that the midfield has. But then you guys started talking about the young kids, and it had me thinking about Vasquez and Olney. And they've looked really good in the few Union 2 games that I've went to. They look really good. I would love to see them feature a few times if all bad things happen. They need to, injury-wise. But I guess you could say like I'm wishy-washy about the midfield. Like it's a good midfield, of course, but then again, it is one injury away from possibly falling apart.
Or suspension, knowing Martinez.
Oh, didn't even think about that.
Absolutely.
Him getting his red card in the preseason game.
Yeah. Incredible. Tim, how are you feeling about this in general?
Yeah, I mean, I have very similar thoughts to what everyone has said. I like the players who are there as like kind of the penciled in starters right now. Or I guess you could say Gazdag's penned in there. Like he's there. Martinez is going to be there as well. You would hope Jack McGlynn is now officially going to be that left-sided midfielder. And then the right side. It's like we've been seeing a lot of Quinn Sullivan. I'd expect if it's going to be a 4-4-2 diamond, especially down in Saprissa next week, I would think you probably wouldn't want Sullivan, but it seems like it's Sullivan's job right now, which is why I think we were talking about the back three. But I don't know. One name we haven't talked about yet is Sanders Nagobo. I hope I said that.
Oh yeah,
He's
yep.
Butcher his name. But like they brought him in. He's like one of the actual transfers for this season. And I know we have him listed on the right, but I just have a feeling that he's going to pop up in different spots all across this midfield. And yeah, I think with the midfield, like Jim's going to have to rely on rotation. You're always going to want to play Gazdag, but if there's 3 games in 10 days and you need the maximum amount of points and 2 of them are on the road, maybe you rest Gazdag and you play someone like Sullivan up in that spot, and then you put Ngobo in or you put Bedoya in. It's going to have to be a chess match for Jim Curtin with this lineup this year, especially in the midfield. So I think that's where I'm going to leave off with that. It's going to be a whole lot.
Awesome. Yeah, and moving on to the last group, we got the forwards. On the league has been put on notice of what the front three of this team can do. Most goals over the last couple seasons, manned by Ua and Carranza up top. Carranza, very consistent over the last 2 years. I think he had the same amount of goals over the last 2 seasons, which is interesting because I feel like a lot of people had this thought that Carranza maybe had a little dip in production last season. But yeah, he scored the same amount of goals. Uwar, I feel like similarly people are expecting a little bit more. And I think that maybe is the theme around this team this year is that maybe the front office is hoping that a lot of guys take that next step or take that step to kind of be a little bit better than they have been. And I think probably one of the biggest question marks in this team is who is going to be the third forward. Last year it was Chris Donovan. I think he wasn't lighting the world on fire, but scored some important goals for us and gets in dangerous positions and presses. But Ty Baribo, he played less than 2 full games last season. We don't even really know what the guy's about. We haven't really seen anything from preseason. He was hurt for a little bit of it. So I still don't know how much we're going to see of him early on in the season. So that's still a question mark. But we did bring in a new forward, one of the few transfers that we actually did have this season, which is it was so unique looking who the player was from, and the meme is kind of no one ever knowing the teams that players Union buy are from. And I had never heard of this team, and I don't think a lot of other people had either. But Marcus Anderson, a young forward from Brooklyn, he has impressed Jim Curtin early on in preseason. He looks to be very physical. Jim says that he's adding much needed competition in that forward group, which I thought was an interesting thing to say. It kind of felt like maybe he might be not calling out his forwards, but pushing them a little bit. And so, yeah, I'm interested to see if this forward group can continue to produce on the same level it has been. Let's start it off with Tim this time. What are you thinking about the forwards, Tim?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we got Ua and Carranza. They're still up there. Carranza didn't leave. We know those offers came in and he didn't want to go, or maybe his significant other. I don't know. That's a rumor. But right now you kind of just have to ride those two, especially in big matches, especially early in the year when hopefully their fitness is up there. So that those two are the starters. When it comes to the backups, it's like, you don't know who's going to really come in right now. I mean, Chris Donovan was the trusted guy last year, and I know a lot of fans didn't really appreciate that because he's not a flashy goal scorer. He does everything that Jim Curtin loves a forward to do. He's going to run his ass off the entire game, or as long as he's in, he's going to press. And then there's times where he'll get in behind and he'll score an important goal like we saw in Leagues Cup. Where he scored that winner against Querétaro, I believe it was. But yeah, like, is it going to be him? Is it going to be Ty Baribo, who they spent the money on last summer? Marcus Anderson is this new guy coming in. Is he really going to push for the minutes? It's just a bunch of question marks after the starters. But hey, at least there's forwards on the depth chart. I don't know. There's been some years where it's just been the starters, and then the rest is like, oh, we're gonna pull this midfielder up, or we're gonna play Gazdag as a striker, like that kind of thing. So, I mean, having 5 strikers, I guess it's kind of nice right now. Thinking of Union teams in the past, so that's my thoughts on it. Eric, how are you feeling on these forwards?
I'm feeling cautiously optimistic.
There you go.
I think we know what we're getting from Carranza. And I will say, Bremen is a wonderful city. Werder is a great club that need to get back to where they used to be. And thank God Carranza disagrees with me, because I'm so glad he's still here. Ua, we need to see more of. We've talked about that a little bit, and he has it in him. And that's, I think, part of what has made the inconsistency so frustrating, is that we see it, and he's getting in these great positions. And then that end product is just not quite there. And that leaves the door open for these other 3 strikers to maybe push for starting spots more often. We'll see about Barabo. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Chris Donovan getting more minutes than maybe we're expecting. I mean, he started the match yesterday.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if Carranza maybe had a bit of a knock or what, but I think they're not going to be renaming the MVP trophy for a different Donovan anytime soon, but he's still bringing those, like we've said, those important goals at times that I think maybe we haven't quite valued his contribution as much as maybe we should be. And by we, I don't mean like us 4. I mean in general Union fandom.
Yeah.
And of course you've got a few Donovan stands out there who love him. And I'll admit I was a bit of a hater at first, but I've definitely come around on him a lot more. And then Marcus Anderson.
I mean, Chris Donovan, the local guy, like it's hard not to like it when you see someone like that score a big goal, like against Querétaro in the Leagues Cup. It was great. It was awesome.
Yeah. And then Marcus Anderson, I mean, with the praise he's been getting, I don't know. It's so hard because I feel like a lot of these backups have been doing well and getting a lot of praise and stuff. And I wouldn't be surprised to see one of them get a start, maybe even on Tuesday or on Saturday when we're not expecting. I feel like sometimes in that first game of the season, especially, like we'll have 1 or 2 surprise starters. Yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised if one of those came up front.
Yeah, it's really true. Real quick, I know we're kind of going through the roster. We've gone through each position. I think it's time for us to kind of move on and get to some of the games, at least early on in the season. So we're going to look at the Union's MLS season schedule, at least the first few months of it. So I'm going to throw it over to Paul so he can kind of lead us through that and get us to look at the schedule here, because it's actually kind of surprising how many tough games there are in the first few months of the season here. So go for it, Paul.
Yeah, like you said, Tim, there's a lot of tough games, but for those listening, I'll just give you a little rundown of how we're going to go through the schedule so you guys aren't going to get confused. Basically I'm going to read the first couple of games, and then I'm going to go around and ask the team who they think could be a surprising game, who they think is going to be the easiest, basically, normal stuff like that. So let's just get started. As you all know, the Union opened up against Chicago Fire, who they have had some new signings throughout the offseason. They're going to be an exciting team. Then we traveled to Kansas City to face off against Sporting KC, and then we fly back home to face the Seattle Sounders. So I guess, Tim, I'll let you start off your thoughts on the first opening home stretch, and then we'll go from there.
The first 3 games of the year. I mean, it's crazy that it's already happening. I mean, next Saturday we play at home against Chicago. I feel like if you had asked me this question like a week or 2 ago, I would have said Chicago was the easiest game, but I'm not really sure now. I mean, obviously then they go to Kansas City. It's always tough to play in Kansas City, even early in the year, and even if they're not at their best, we've seen them kind of fall off a little bit. Then at the end that stretch coming home against Seattle, the Union don't play Seattle very often. And Seattle doesn't always do well when they come to Chester. So yeah, I think the thing that I'm looking forward to in this group of games is just to see how everything kind of starts off, because we know that the beginning of seasons, especially for MLS teams, is a little rough. Like last year, we saw the Union beat Columbus. What was it? Was it 4-0 or 4-1? I don't.
4-1.
4-1, and then we were like, oh, the Union are going to be the best team this year, and then Columbus goes and wins MLS Cup. So like, there's a lot of changes there. So I think we might see something similar with that against Chicago. I'm not saying that Chicago's going to win MLS Cup. Don't get me wrong. I really don't think they're going to do that. But Chicago has made a lot of moves. Got Kellen Acosta now, a few other attacking pieces that are actually hopefully going to be helpful for them. So I feel like that game could be the most surprising, just because it's the beginning of the year and we have no idea what's going to happen yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think I'm pretty similar to Tim in that. I think Chicago's one of those ones where hopefully they just haven't put the pieces together yet. You know, they just got Kellen Acosta, that forward from Belgium. I think you pronounce his name Kuipers, who's really good. Hopefully he still has a little bit of jet lag, or just hasn't gotten used to speaking to his new teammates yet. But I think the one that I'm looking at is that game on the road in Kansas City. That could be a tricky one. They're secretly have been a tough team over the last like year and a half. I think I can't remember if it was last year or the year before, where they started off like awfully. They were really, really bad. I think it was last season.
It was last year.
Yeah, and poor Kevincho was over there just getting absolutely agonizing results every single game. And then they made the playoffs, which is probably more a testament to the playoff format than their actual results. But there is some good pieces on Kansas City, and I think that just with all the games, I mean, there's 3 games in the first 7 days, and then you turn around and go to Kansas City. That's a rough game to me. That one to me is one that scares me. What about you, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say the same thing about the Chicago match. I think, and this may be wishful thinking, but I think it could go a similar way to Columbus last year, with them just not having had the chance to gel yet. Spending $9 million on a striker is something we can only dream of, but it would be hopefully, like you said, hopefully they just haven't had a chance to really get to know each other and hit the ground running yet, and we can take advantage. Kansas City, going to be tough. I mean, not only did they make the playoffs, they knocked off the number 1 seed St. Louis in the first round of the playoffs. It's a tough place to play. They're always a challenge. I think I'll be happy with a draw in that game. Seattle, I hope we crush them. I still haven't forgiven Freddie Ljungberg for some of his comments from back in 2010. As an Arsenal fan, I was particularly offended. So I always, and plus the Open Cup final when they came to Chester and beat us. So I always want to beat them. They were our first opponent ever. I mean, but that was away, and this is home. So I think we need to take advantage, get back to making Subaru Park a fortress, and really lay a marker down for those home games to get the season off on the right note.
Absolutely.
Yeah, before we move on, I'll just give my little thoughts. I think that Kansas City match, I mean, it's a really tough, you could argue it's a really tough 3 game stretch to start off the season, especially with the 2 games against the Saprissa. And then you have to look in, maybe that we'll move on in the Champions Cup, and we'll have some possible rotation thing from there if we're playing again. But then again, like you said, in Kansas City is a tough spot to win. Kansas City, they're always tough. And then I'm going to agree with Eric, home against Chicago and Seattle. I think the boys will start to make Subaru Park a fortress again. Hopefully they'll take care of business. Well, let's move on. So for the second 3-game stretch, it's 2 road games, back-to-back road games. We'll be at Austin and then at Portland. And then we'll fly home for March 30th matchup against Minnesota. So, Eric, I'll let you get started on this one. What are your thoughts?
It's always tough to play on the road, especially that's a lot of travel too in a relatively short stretch. I've seen a lot of people predicting Austin to not be very good this year, and I kind of buy into it and kind of don't. I don't know. It's hard to reconcile their slumps with their heights, I guess, in the past couple of years. So it makes it a little hard to know what to expect from them. I think of the two away matches, I think that's the one where we're more likely to pick up points. I think Portland's going to be really tough. I think they're going to surprise some people this season. Minnesota at home, going back to what we were saying about winning the home games, I think we've got to pick up 3 points in that one. And I think we should expect to pick up 3 points in that one.
Yeah.
Jimmy, you want to go?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like you guys said, it's a tough. I think just the travel in MLS is crazy. I mean, to fly to Austin, then to have to fly to Portland, that's a lot of travel, and then flying back to Subaru Park. To me, the interesting one, I'm really interested in Portland, but I'm also interested to see what Minnesota's like at home. I think we opened the season against them 2 years ago, and I think we drew 1-1. I think Corey Burke had a header late in the second half, or relatively early in the second half. And then we had that like really crazy 4-4 Open Cup game against them where we lost in PKs. For some reason, we don't play super well against Minnesota as of late. And so I'm interested to see how they are. Something that always is really curious to me about Minnesota is Emmanuel Reynoso. Dude can be like one of the better players in the league, and then like last year he just like didn't show up for the first couple months or whatever. So yeah, I don't know. Minnesota's really interesting to me. And then I'm interested. Yeah, Portland has a lot of new players. Maybe he was leaving. I think they've got who's their new coach? Phil Neville, right? Is that right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was
I forgot about that.
Yep. And then who's their new keeper now? Crepeau, right? Maxime Crepeau. Yeah. So that's, I don't know, that's going to be a really interesting game in general, just to kind of see how Portland is, and at Providence Park too. That'll be a tough game. So. But I think the one that scares me a little bit is that Minnesota game at home. It feels like a sneaky draw coming too, and I just realized it's also at 2 p.m., which I had not realized that we had an afternoon game this year. So
odd. For me, I gotta say the one game in this stretch that scares me is Portland, because the Union have never won there. They've one draw there ever, and the rest of the times they've lost. So it's always a tough place to play out there. You know, that travel, like we were talking about, they're going to have to come off of already traveling to Austin to then travel. I would assume they'd stay out west and go to Portland, do that sort of thing, and then come home after that the next week for that weird week afternoon kickoff against Minnesota. So yeah, it's so interesting to see that the Union are playing a lot of teams from the Western Conference early in this season stretch, which you don't usually see that very often, which I guess will make it for some really fun games down the stretch where they play just Eastern Conference teams. But for me, it's that Portland game. Also, we have to give a shout out here to our guy El Parcero. Philly, what's up, dude?
Hey.
What's up? But yeah, those are my thoughts on that little stretch there. The Portland game scares the hell out of me.
Alrighty. Good points, everyone. I agree, honestly, with everyone. It's going to be a tough opening stretch, but we're going to move on to our final 3 games of the little stretch we're going to talk about, and then we're just going to get into more travel. So we're flying. We're going to play at Nashville on April 6th, and then we're going to be at Atlanta on the 14th. Then there's a little week off, and then we're home on the April 27th against Real Salt Lake. Jimmy, I'll let you get started on this one. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just trying to look up. I feel like with that break in time there's got to be some international break there of some sort. There's so much this year that it's hard for me to keep straight what is where. But obviously 2 really tough road games with Nashville and Atlanta. Really interested to see how Nashville comes together this year. They had Sam Surridge come in last year to kind of help out Hani Mukhtar in the attack, and didn't really work out. But then they went out and got Tyler Boyd from LA Galaxy this offseason, who was pretty good for them. So they're going to be pretty interesting. I think they might have a little bit more in the attack, which is good because I think Jim Curtin even said in one of his press conferences that if we had to have a 3-game series against them last year, Union fans probably would have fallen asleep because of how boring Union and Nashville games have been over the last couple of years. Just absolute defense-minded games. To me, I think Paul brought this up in our little meeting beforehand. Real Salt Lake in Philly is probably the one I'm looking most forward to because I grew up, or I spent a year living in Salt Lake City, and I lived a mile from the stadium, and it was the year that it opened. I lived there, and that was the first game I ever went to. First MLS game I ever went to was in Salt Lake City, and up until I moved to Philadelphia in 2019, I probably would have considered myself a Real Salt Lake fan. Not really a fan, but just it was the team I had an association with. So it feels I've kind of always said they're my West Coast team, and I'm excited to kind of have that little homage to my MLS start come to Subaru Park. What about you, Eric?
Yeah, I'm hoping that Nashville game is more entertaining than they have been in recent years. It's always tough to play away at their stadium, although we seem to get some very, very good pictures out of it. So hopefully we can, at the very least, get some good pictures of the team. Atlanta, we always want to beat Atlanta. Their fans are annoying. And especially beating them away, it's always fun. And then, I'm trying to think of the last time we played Salt Lake at home, and I'm having trouble doing so. So I think that's a lot of fun. It's always fun to get the West Coast teams out of here, both because it means the team doesn't have to travel as much when they come here, and we get to see them, which is a more rare occurrence than the Eastern Conference teams, which we're watching play 2, 3, 4 times per season. So similar to you, Jimmy, I've got that one circled out of those 3, I think.
Okay. Well, before I get into my take on it, Jillian just wanted to correct me, which I appreciate because we did win in Portland. They won in 2022. It was 2-0 goals from Gazdag and Sergio Santos in that game. So thank you, Jillian, for pointing that out. I missed that when I was pulling that up. So thank you there. Now for this stretch, I will say going on the road to Nashville and then Atlanta, that's going to be really, really rough. And we'll just have to see how the Union is doing at that point. Are they moving on in Champions Cup? Did they get knocked out? Are they just focusing on MLS? How is the team really gelling? I think it would be lucky to get 4 points out of that stretch, which means that if we're looking at this in 3-game stretches, that you have to win that home game against RSL, and they're a strong team in their own right. And like Eric said, we don't get to see them very much. So it'll be really interesting to see how that goes. But really, really quick, I know we're talking about all these things. However, I just saw something pop up on my phone that I want to throw up on the screen here because we're going to break some news to some fans. I don't know if anyone's phone is going off. This apparently just happened or is going to happen. It's a rumor, obviously from Union rumors here, but that Joaquin Torres is getting ready to depart the Union. So real quick, what are you guys' initial thoughts on this rumor that just popped up?
Well, I think maybe it kind of answers a question I asked Eric earlier, which was maybe was all of that playing time he was getting in preseason a kind of a little shock to other teams. I don't think anyone is super surprised by this. It didn't seem like it was working out, and I think a lot of people were kind of shocked that he made it this far into the new season. But it's going to be interesting to see if that actually comes true. Paul, what do you think?
That's crazy to think that that's true, but I'm actually that was broken to me. I'm shocked. But something that I am excited to see is me and my friends have always wanted to see more Raffanello playing time. And I think this opens the gate for Raffanello to be the backup cam. So maybe this shows the Curtain's trust in Raffanello, how well he's maybe been playing. I really think he has talent. We saw some of the bangers he scored for Union 2 last year. So I'm really I guess it's crazy. I'm curious to see how much they got for Torres. But then again, I'm excited to see Raffanello get more playing time because I really think he's a top prospect for this team.
Yeah, hopefully. It would be. I'm with you. I think it would be really nice to see him get more playing time. I do wonder if they'll think about bringing someone else in.
I was just going to say, because they still have, while the European windows are closed, they still can make moves within MLS, I believe, until I think April. It's pretty late into the start of the season. And I'm quickly pulling up Transfer Market to see which free agents are available because I don't think it was necessarily something that was on the list a couple days ago, but maybe there's a diamond in the rough out there somewhere now that is kind of glimmering to Ernst Tanner and Jim Curtin.
Yeah, I'm just wondering. I feel like with the amount of games we've got, going in with just Raffanello as a backup, I think feels like the kind of risk that traditionally they may not have wanted to take. Like, obviously, we've been giving playing time to some of our younger players, but that's usually balanced out with a veteran as well, or more of a veteran. So I'm wondering if they bring someone to maybe even just to fight it out with Raffanello for backup minutes and to push each other. Because I mean, they're not going to push Gazdag. So just having that competition for those backup minutes could be something they look to do.
Something I just thought of was does this mean we could see more Vasquez minutes as well? Because I know that was talked about throughout preseason.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
He could be
something that stands out to me or I don't know if it necessarily fits as a backup to Gazdag, but I know that Miami is also in a really particular situation that colored me surprised. And I know that they're unloading or are trying to unload a bunch of players. And I just wonder how this changes the way that the front office approaches the first little window of the season. I wonder if Ernst is a little scared to make interleague moves because he tried that last season, and 2 of the 3 are no longer with Union in Andres Pereira and Joaquin Torres, or reportedly Torres. And Damian Lowe's the only one that survived out of that 3 that everyone kind of thought it was a little strange that Ernst was kind of going in with those interleague moves. So I don't know. I'm interested to see how this shakes out. I do think maybe with the way Jim Curtin's talking, the more natural move is to kind of bring players up from Union 2 and give them those opportunities. But I do think there is some real need for some experience in some of these games behind Gazdag as well.
Yeah, well, that's some breaking news there for you. Reportedly, Joaquin Torres is on his way to Chile, so we'll see if that happens. And we started talking about depth and games. I mean, really quick, I think we should go through a little bit, at least, of the cup competitions that the Union are going to be in, because that depth is going to be tested now, especially if we're losing even more players. So I know, Eric, you wanted to talk a little bit about the cup competition, so why don't you go ahead and go for it?
Yeah, I mean, that's where we're starting off the season on Tuesday, is in the Champions Cup. I keep almost saying Champions League. I'm not used to Champions Cup yet. But yeah, I mean, we're kicking that off on Tuesday. That's where the season starts. So it's a little easier that way in some ways, because you don't have to, the rotation isn't as big of a necessary.
Yeah.
What's the word I'm looking for? Necessity. That's the word I'm looking for. But you still have to balance, especially with the second leg. You still have to balance that game time and not tire people out when they're not necessarily match fit yet. And then hopefully, as the tournament goes on, hopefully we get past that first round, and that rotation is going to become more and more important.
Yeah.
So
I think for me, go ahead, Eric.
I was going to say, Jim Curtin hasn't necessarily done a lot of squad rotation in the past, even when people have thought he's needed it. With that heated atmosphere, particularly away, but also at home in the first leg, like thinking back on the last time we played Saprissa, there was an all-out brawl between the two teams after that tackle from Blanco on Kai Wagner towards the end of the first leg, and Blanco is still on their roster. So we'll see how particularly the first leg in that hostile environment, but the second leg as well, how those go, because there's it's a chance to set the tone for the season going forward. Both in the style of play and in the mentality that we show in those difficult circumstances.
Yeah.
And of course, one interesting thing, and maybe disadvantage to MLS teams entering Cup just does not roll as good as Champions League.
I know.
Yeah, but one disadvantage MLS teams have in this competition is that, and we looked it up, Saprisa's already a few games into their season. They've already kind of, had a chance to gel a little bit, to get their feet under them. And as Paul pointed out in our meeting before, they're currently in third place, but they do have a big match against the, I believe, the second place team this weekend. So they're not the only team in this game that has to manage multiple competitions, big games, maybe some squad rotation. So that's something that I'm going to personally keep an eye on Saturday night, and see if the normal guys that they typically have starting are in the lineup as well.
I mean, real quick, I know we've been talking about Saprissa and CCC and things like that, but I know we wanted to talk about Leagues Cup as well. So I'll kind of just jump into that. I know that's later on in the season, but we do know that the Union will be in a group with Cruz Azul and Charlotte FC. So I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that, because we all know what Leagues Cup was last year and how much of a slog that it was. And we saw the Union go far, but not quite far enough, falling to Miami. But then winning third place, which was great, and now that's why we're in CCC. But how are you guys feeling about the group for Leagues Cup, which will be coming here in the summer?
It's going to be. Go ahead, Paul.
I'm really curious to see Charlotte, how they are, because they just hired Dean Smith, who was in the Premier League, and I'm really just curious, as like a fan who just watched the Premier League, I'm just curious to see how that appointment works out. Because I personally feel that was a good appointment. I think it shows the direction that they want to bring the team in. He had success in the top division in England, and he's coming over to the MLS. And I think that also shows that the league itself is growing. That you can have learn top managers. But all in all, I'm just curious to see how Charlotte. That's like my main thing. I'm curious to see how Charlotte looks this upseason. And Cruz Azul. We all know them as the team who Messi opened his Inter Miami career against. I'll have to do more research into them. Don't really have the knowledge of them, but I do know them from the Messi free kick to win the game at the end.
Yeah, you bring up well, first of all, my mic's still working there?
Yeah,
you're good, Jimmy.
Paul, great point with Charlotte. They just got rid of both Karol Swiderski and Joswiak, which opens a couple of DP slots. So we could see a very, very different Charlotte team come summertime. It's the other team that were Cruz Azul. They're a very interesting team, as you said, Paul. They had that start. Messi's start was against them. They actually have one of the players that was on Querétaro last year. I'm forgetting his last name, but I know he scored against us. There is a little bit of history in this group with that player being on Cruz Azul now. So I think it's going to be a little bit of a tougher group than it was last year. especially if Charlotte can get some players, some good DPs into their squad. But I think the advantage being to Union is that they will play all their group games at Subaru Park. So we know how good they can be there.
Yeah, that's very true. So we're talking about international cup competitions and the Union. Do we think we're going to see U.S. Open Cup this year? Or what? Like, how do you guys think that's going to go? We all know MLS wanted to pull out of it, and now U.S. Soccer is like, well, actually, I don't know if you can. And now they're apparently in conversation to figure out how this is going to work. MLS wanted its second teams to participate, and U.S. Soccer is like, well, that would dilute the product. So that's kind of where everything was left off. I'll go to Eric first. How do you think they're going to resolve this issue?
I've been thinking about this a lot, and I'm having trouble deciding. I think part of that is because I just have a feeling they're going to go more towards MLS's what MLS wants than what US Soccer wants, and I don't want that to be the case. So part of me is kind of rebelling against that idea, but I think that ultimately is what's probably going to end up happening. And we may see a thing where officially the first teams are the ones playing, but it's really the second team rosters are the ones that are on the field. I think we're going to see something like that, some kind of workaround where it's the first teams in name only, and it's in reality the second team, which is, I mean, for the Union at least, it's good exposure for those players, and a good chance for them to maybe, if the first team coaches still have to be there, then good chance for them to make an impression on the coaching staff at the very least. This is me trying to pull a silver lining out of this, but I hope they find a solution that is better than MLS pulling the first teams out.
I think in general, just what a bummer it is, right? And I feel bad for the like smaller clubs that are not in MLS that kind of bank on that dream of hosting a bigger club and that ticket revenue and just the event of having just a huge sold out game in front of the top level competition in our country. It's sad to think that might not be an opportunity for a lot of those people that love to watch that. And honestly, that is kind of a foundational tournament from soccer everywhere. And so it's kind of sad to see that we may be heading towards getting away from that. But like Eric said, I think that if there is a silver lining, there are so many exciting players in U2 right now. If we had to play a certain age group or players that are only on the U2 team, we might have one of the more exciting groups out there right now. So I actually would enjoy watching them play against some USL teams or whatever it may be. So that we'll have to see, but that would be the one silver lining for me as well.
I have a little bit of a theory that I was thinking of. I don't know if it's really a theory, but do you think that possibly they could rule in with favor of U.S. Soccer, the MLS, and then and then you would just end up seeing a bunch of deaf players start these games? So it's not like they're really risking their, you know what I'm saying? Like they're not risking their starters, but they're not playing them. So they're basically going both ways a little bit. It's like shaky.
Yeah, that would be a shame too. I would hate to see it turn into a competition that's not taken seriously or anything like that, because I think that's what it makes that dream of a small club beating a bigger club is what makes it so exciting. And maybe it does make it a little bit more exciting because maybe there's more opportunities for those big clubs to kind of get knocked off there. But yeah, I don't know. It just wouldn't make it as exciting in my mind.
Yeah. You can't take away the cup sets. You just can't.
I agree.
You can't do it.
I think it's kind of crazy that you're taking away the U.S. version of the FA Cup, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I know it's obviously not as big as the FA Cup, but you're taking away, like Manchester United played at a fourth tier League Two team the other last month in the tournament, and I really think that's just a cool thing to see.
Yeah.
But I think it's a sad situation all throughout if they do end up going the second team route.
Yep. I mean, we'll have to see. I mean, either way, I feel like we'll be talking about it. We'll either be talking about some, first team players playing in U.S. Open Cup, or maybe it's Union 2, or who knows what it'll be. But I don't know.
Even Sullivan out there, I'm down for that.
Yeah.
Honestly, yeah, like that's what I'm saying. It's like there is some silver lining there. I do genuinely think that if there is, if it does go to the Union or the amateur route, but I hope it doesn't though. I really hope it doesn't. I don't want to have to build up excitement for it. It was exciting as it was.
Right. Yeah. Well, hey guys, so we just went through a whole lot here previewing the Union season. We went through their roster, the early part of their schedule, all of the cup competitions. That'll pretty much do it here for us for Doop on the Volley, except we are always going to end episodes of this show with what we are calling our On the Volley takes. So for this episode, we're going to go around the horn here, and we're going to talk about the thing we're most hopeful for this Union season. So I want to throw it right over to Jimmy to start this off. So Jimmy, what are you most hopeful for this Union season?
My favorite thing about doing this Union coverage is all the people that I get to meet from doing it. And I've met so many people online, and getting to connect with those people in person. I don't care what your parents said, meet strangers from the internet. It turns out amazing. And I wouldn't be here without that. I literally on this podcast without that. And I wouldn't be doing the whole Union thing without that too. So my hope is that I can meet as many people as possible this season, hang out, have a drink with as many people as possible, and hopefully this all leads to us being able to have some sort of event this year, whether that's in-person watch party, just a get-together. I don't know what it is, but I would love to get all the people that I've met through this Union community all in one place to do what we frankly all do best, which is talk about a team that will probably never spend as much money as we've spent on them. So that's what I'm most hopeful for this season.
Awesome. Paul, what do you got? What do you
I love that. I love that idea, Jimmy. I was gonna do something similar. Last season, I was more like with what was my first year season ticket, so I was more with my friends the whole time, like learning the atmosphere and all. It was like my first full season as a writer, so I was like growing into the team. But this year, I really want to meet more Union people and like I guess develop like that family friend, like like that family relationship with others. And I really think the watch party idea, I like that idea. We could do like a little Doop on the Volley watch party maybe.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think my thing is I want to just meet more people and get more ingrained into the Union community. And then I guess one more thing is me and my friends every year, starting last year, we started to travel to a different away trip every year. So last year we went to New England, and this year we're planning on going to Columbus. So I guess getting to Columbus, is a fun goal that I would have.
There you go.
Nice.
Yeah, Eric, how are you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, mine's it's similar. Make it to more games.
Yeah.
Last season, I did not make it to very many games, which, I mean, in some ways, it's easier to write about games when you're watching them on TV.
Yeah.
But I'd rather be there. And that kind of goes along with like getting to meet everyone, meet all our friends from the internet, as you were saying. Having that opportunity to tailgate with people and just really build up that community, and also for Union Hulk to come back to his true form. Throw that one in there too.
I love it. For me, I'm most hopeful, like a lot of what you guys are saying, just for the atmosphere. Like I love going to Union games, whether it's as press or as a fan, and just seeing the atmosphere that's been built now over 15 seasons for this club, it really does mean a whole lot for a whole lot of people. It gives us this platform to cover the sport that we love, watch the team that we love, interact with people that we love. So it's awesome to see that happen. And I think that's what I'm most hopeful for, is just getting back into it, whether the team is, breaking its own records for points in a season, or if they're quite honestly shit and people are mad online about it. The community is in and of itself entertaining and fun, and I'm just hopeful that it stays that way. That's what I'm hopeful for this season. Well, guys, I think that does it for our first ever Doop on the Volley podcast. Thank you so much if you have stayed on the stream here and watched us. If you are listening to us, that means that you found our audio version of this podcast, which is awesome. That will always be available on wherever you subscribe for podcasts, whether it's Apple, Google, Spotify, anywhere else, you name it, you'll find it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Doop by the Volley and on Instagram at Doop by the Volley. It's the same name. There's different capitalization, but if you type it in, you'll find us. So go ahead, give us a follow, and we'll talk to you guys next week. Hopefully we'll be talking about a Union win down at Saprissa. But anyways, have a good one, guys.